Good afternoon, and welcome to St. Francis High School. My name is Eric Gleason, and I'm the Director of Franciscan Spirit and Life here on campus. I am looking forward to taking you through the school and talking a little bit about our office, introducing to you to what we do. Here in the local area, we have all kinds of great schools from different charisms, different backgrounds. If you wanted to come to a great school, you're in the right location, whether it be the public school system, which is one of the best in the area, but then you got schools from a Franciscan background, the Lasallian background, Dominican background, Jesuit background, each one of them with their own strengths, and each one of them trying to teach young men or young boys to become men in their own way. The difference between one school to the next, what we do in the classrooms, what we do in the fields, or even in the theater is going to be very similar. But it's going to be the lens that we teach those things through. And in this case, it's going to be from the teachings of St. Francis of Assisi, a man who lived in the Middle Ages, many generations, many centuries ago. We bring the teachings that he found to be important at that time, we modernize them, and we still teach these young men the same things that St. Francis was taught so many years ago. St. Francis High School began as a seminary, a place where young men came to study to become priests in the Capuchin Franciscan tradition. And as a seminary, the hope was always that we could learn the virtues that are important to the life of St. Francis. Those virtues were usually taught to the students through the examples led by the friars on campus, the teachers on campus, and through that example, the young men hopefully learned just how to be Franciscan by putting it into practice. Over the years, this tradition has continued. There is the desire for the young men to still learn the values that are important to St. Francis, but since we don't have as many clergy members, the board and the administration put together a list of 16 core virtues that would be important for young men to know if they were trained in the Franciscan tradition. And these 16 virtues are not mutually exclusive and sometimes are countercultural, but they're things that we find to be important for our young men to learn to be great future husbands and fathers. And it was really learned through that practice. Our hope, as always, is that we take any of the lessons that we've learned from the beautiful city of Assisi in Italy, and we want to bring those lessons back to this school of St. Francis High School that we now call home. A great place for us to not only practice the virtues, but see them at work through our teachers, through our faculty, and through our extracurricular coaches.
Darling, I'll turn the lights back on now. Watching as the credits all roll down, and crying. You know we're playing to a full house. No heroes, villains, one to blame. While wilted roses fill the stage, and the thrill is gone. Our debut was a masterpiece, but in the end, for you and me on this show, it can't go on. We used to have it all, but now's our curtain call. So hold for the applause, and wave out to the crowd, and take our final bow. Oh, it's our time to go, but at least we stole the show. 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 but the band plays on now. We're crying, crying. So let the velvet roll down, down. No heroes, villains, one to blame. While wilted roses fill the stage, and the thrill is gone. Our debut was a masterpiece. Our lines we read so perfectly, but the show, it can't go on. We used to have it all, but now's our curtain.
So we have a lot of different paths that we take to teach Franciscan charism to the young men at St. Francis. And one of them is very related to this relief here. St. Francis rebuilding his church. We make sure that every one of our students is involved in some sort of active service project. Not this story, but another story from St. Francis's life is the heart and soul of our service program. St. Francis, at the time that he lived in Assisi, there was a lot of lepers that traveled around the area, and he was petrified of contracting this disease for most of his life. After his conversion, the story is basically told of St. Francis sitting on his horse and traveling down the side of the hill in Assisi. And at the bottom of the hill were the lepers. Usually the lepers would have two large rocks or wood, and they would bang them together so that you could hear the sound of where the lepers are and would be able to steer clear of them and possibly their disease. In this particular day, St. Francis is traveling down the road and comes into very close contact with one of the lepers of the time. He wasn't banging those pieces of wood together. So they both stop and they both look at each other. Ordinarily, St. Francis probably would have turned around and left. Or possibly he could have reached in his pocket, grabbed some money, and give that to this leper, because the reality is he's from a upper middle class family and had the ability to do that. But this particular day, for whatever reason, St. Francis gets off of his horse. He walks up to this leper, he embraces this leper, and in that moment has this conversion of understanding that that leper symbolizes every single person, the people who struggle, some of the people who maybe have difficulties traveling through this life for whatever reason. And he has that moment of conversion. We today have several lepers of our own, and although leprosy is not the problem, there are a lot of underserved in our communities. Some of the people may be involved in homelessness, or maybe they're sick. We work with the elderly, and we work with just a lot of different populations that tend to be underserved in our area. We ask our students to do that as well. As freshmen, when we're on campus, we're all allowed to group together and travel to Skid Row. We serve breakfast in our service experience known as the Matina. Sophomores travel together. We've had a couple different experiences over the years, whether it be through the Boys and Girls Clubs of Southern California, or through some of our feeder schools in the local area, where we show up and help to tutor younger kids, give them some of the knowledge that they may not have yet, that we are holding on to, and we give that to them to teach them a little bit about our school, but also about their academics. And when we get to junior year, and they get to pick their own trips. Junior year, they get to pick wherever they want to serve. And when we get to our senior year, we're hoping that it's a more inclusive project that takes some of their own talents, desires, wants, and it puts it into practice to create a service project that they can leave St. Francis having left behind a legacy. All of these in an effort to emulate what St. Francis did so many years ago, travel off of our own even geography. If you've noticed, St. Francis High School is kind of insulated by the hills around us. Our job is to leave that area to help the local communities and to ultimately help serve those who maybe are struggling and lepers in our world. One of the other ways we're able to teach the Franciscan charism is by spending time with Christ. We are a small enough school that we still can ask all of our students to go on a retreat every year. This retreat program is mandatory for each year. We don't make the students necessarily go with us if they're already involved in a church or a youth group where they can do their retreats. We allow those to count, but we also offer enough retreats for every student on campus to come with us and spend some time apart from their studies, apart from their everyday responsibilities, and give them a chance to get to know Jesus in their own way. If they don't believe in Jesus, they have some other religious background, or even just getting to know who they are as human beings. spending time alone with their classmates or spending time just on their own, getting to know themselves and think about their own path is going to be important as well. So the reality is that every one of our students has a chance to do that. They're asked to do that. Sometimes they do go somewhat begrudgingly, but for the most part are happy that they went. That time apart, that opportunity to spend with their classmates is a value that extends way beyond. And earlier, as I spoke about that family atmosphere, I think a lot of the brotherhood that the students speak of come from these experiences of being together, traveling down a path together, learning a little bit about each other, and then coming back to the everyday grind of education. What we've talked about so far is just the bare minimum of what maybe somebody would do here at St. Francis to learn a little bit about Franciscan charism. And we hope that every student does learn that. But if there are students who love what we're teaching and want something greater, we offer a few trips that are larger in scope and scale. These are all optional trips, but things that we really stress as being important to our school. One of them is every spring break, except for last year, we went to Assisi, Italy. And the trip to Assisi, Italy is a pilgrimage that the students take, not really a vacation, not just a spring break trip, but a trip where they go with a hope to learn something about St. Francis, learn something about his life, his legacy, and be able to bring those things back to St. Francis High School. This really is a trip intended for juniors, but all grade levels are invited to at least apply. We've had full trips every single year, and the boys who do attend these trips come back every single time and say how not only inspired they are about the man who St. Francis was, but what they can do with that information here at St. Francis High School. We also offer trips that are service related. A couple years ago we did go to New Mexico, we've been up to the Bay Area. We've had trips scheduled this year that were international that had to be canceled because of the pandemic, but the real goal is to say, you know what, we know that there's a need here at home and hopefully our service program takes care of that, but there's also an extended need that's domestic and international in its scope. And so if we're able to get to these locations to see what else we can do as human beings to kind of make the world a better place, one person changing one person's life is great, but able to see people changing lives internationally can actually be a impetus to changing the world. And so that's really the goal. I want to say thank you for taking some time and visiting our school from a different perspective. We welcome you to come and go through the admissions process, see what you can do to visit this beautiful campus. I've shown you a couple little snapshots, but there's a lot more to see and a lot more that may touch your heart. So thanks again for coming, and good luck on your admissions process.